All right. I'll see you in about an hour. Connection's already here, so it won't be long, I wouldn't have thought. I have a far better control of the mind now than I did before. I trust now that you can hear me and we can begin our session.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
So in the session today, we will have our healing, and then I have a brief talk. And then we will look at what people would like to ask. So may I begin, please, by having the healing names?
Yes. Pia, Maureen, Jerry, Baby James, Angie, Jason and Ben, Liz and Joe, Alan Brackett, Kelsey, Sandra and Mark, Rosa, Camila, Coulter, Angelina, Alexandra, Irene, Loretta, Michelle, George, Stella, Evie Rose Johnston, Olivia Johnston, Howard, Chris, Darren, and finally, Charlotte. Thank you.
There are two more names. Teresa, I am working with you. You know who you are. And the name I referred to a little while ago, Barbara, who is still in the transition process and the healing part until she steps fully into spirit. Please send all those on the list your loving kindness, your metta. Now, this part of the talk talk is aimed at, in part, some of the question or a question that was asked last week. Now, in 1860, in the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah wrote a book called The Seven Valleys. And within the Seven Valleys, the book, there is one quote I would like to use. Those that walk in the garden land of true knowledge see end in the beginning and war in peace. Now, this faith is actually the mystical side, or a mystical faith of Sufism. And this author talks about this quote being particularly important. And the quote is important because it sees life from a different angle. It sees the end in the beginning and war, peace in war, forgive me. So here he alludes to eternity, that there is something other than the events in the world. The events in the world give you extremes, war and peace, for example. Yet he infers that there is something more than war and peace. There is a foundation, a sublayer, something underneath it all. And being mystical, of course, means that he knows of this sublayer. And he knows that this is eternal. Eternity does not begin on the 1st of January. Eternity was prior to the 1st of January and prior to the end of December. Yet the calendar still ticks over. Yet there is something that watches the calendar tick over, and therefore must last longer than 1 year. There is something within you that lasts from year to year, even when your body cells have born and died. So you could say at the end of the year, you have a very different body than you did at the beginning of the year. Yet something is observing, watching, or in attendance the whole year. Something watches your challenges, the times when you lose faith in your connection and then re-establish it, and then to lose it once more, hopefully to gain it again. The times when your difficulties arise, there is something that sees the before the difficulty and during and after. Being aware of this other thing is walking in the garden land of true knowledge. Of course, there are many who listen to this will say, well, this is spirit. This is your spiritual nature. I know this. Surely I walk in this garden land of true knowledge. Let us say you face a challenge. One person is challenging you, saying, you are no good, or some words. If you are here and now, and I mean by this in the physical form, and attached to what is being said, you are running your life within this lifetime, then this challenge for you can be anything from small to rather large. If I or someone called you ugly, then of course you may seek to do something about it. This is not living in the world of true knowledge. This is being in the world and being of it. The knowledge I refer to is being in the world, but not being of it. This, of course, is the awakening of yourself. The more you see and react to the problems of the world, the less you are in your spiritual self. The more you see subject and object, the less you are aware of eternity. The eternal realms are not damaged, not even bothered by the play of one insult in 1 minute in one corner of any universe. So when you become bothered that somebody says this has gone wrong, I do not look my best, then of course you are in the physical world and you are attached to it. You are attempting to retain one corner of the ocean. The true step is to step away, to step back. You judge your lives by, let us say, during the week, how much you have achieved, how much you have crossed off your list of things you needed to do, how you have progressed or not, how you have achieved or not. Surely it makes a lot more sense to be, how aware was I this week? How much presence did I bring to my day? The presence, of course, I infer is yourself, the conscious self, the one that is undisturbed. When an injury, let us say, strikes your shoulder, and you have pain, and it's a pain which carries on for some months. Are you in the pain, or are you just the observer of the pain? Are you the damaged shoulder, or are you a person that has a damaged shoulder? Much could be learned just from that phrase. Are you a damaged shoulder, or are you a person that has a damaged shoulder? You can see the attachment has changed, the attachment to the injury, the attachment to, let us say, the insult or to the problem has changed. You can watch your spiritual nature grow, fall, grow, fall. You step back. You are not attached to mind. You are not attached to event. You are the worker of the mind. You are not the thought. You are not even the thinker. But this is a big step to make, to get to the thinker, not the thought. Are the steps beyond that? So you can watch your mind at play. You can watch the challenge in your circumstance. You can fully attend to it. Yet you can step back from it. So if you step back from it and can stay in this place and understand that you are the permanent nature that watches the years tick by, the injuries come, the injuries go, and you would ask yourself, why? Why is this life unfolding in front of me and yet I am not there? Why am I in the movie theater yet I am not in the movie? Why? Your mind will never rationalize that. Your mind will never think at sufficient level to conclude. And here, then, as alluded to in other talks, you must step away from the path of knowledge. That is your boundary to knowledge. Yet you have to step beyond it. So as your life unfolds in front of you, let the experience of it dwell within you and pass through you. Let it arise, the emotion of grief or love or anger, and let it pass. You judge yourself by saying, I should not be angry or sad. I should not have grief because I have lost my friend. Because I know of spirit. Let that grief rise. Do not resist. Do not hold on. And it will pass through in its own course. Experience the life you are experiencing. But know there is something deeper. Step out of the movie into the audience. And at least in some degree, you will be walking in the garden land of true knowledge. So let us progress to the first question.
Thank you, Ignatius. We have a question from Angelina. Angelina, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Ignatius, lovely to be with you again.
Good morning.
May I have an insight to the language of light? To me, it's been an inner knowing of the vibrational frequencies of shapes, patterns, or symbols for a number of years.
Light language and symbology. And you wonder why you have had this connection. Now, I must answer this question both personally and universally. Now, personally, for you, you have, over many weeks, months, and years, been given messages by I and by your internal world of beings beyond where you, well, let's just say where you exist. I go back well into your ancestry, beyond this life and previous lives, to the caves. You understand this cave that I refer to. It is in your visions, my dear, and we have spoken about this before, I believe.
Thank you.
And within that time, then there were those which undertook the work of the brotherhood, those which undertook the work of, let's call it the white brotherhood, the golden dawn, the steps into the masters. And you know of your attendance. And here, many times, there was much persecution of those which profess knowledge beyond the human world, and those which understood, let us say, the subculture, as I refer to in my speech. And here symbology was given and used in many ways, only to be used later in other cultures. A way of hiding knowledge, or giving message, or passing on information. Some people were marked in a certain way, and some buildings, of course, and also other locations as well. So there was a need at times to use the symbols to guide people along a path. Let us say to a particular doorway, to a meeting, to a gathering. But your question infers beyond that. And the symbols, of course, have been given as a representation of the universal being and the energy that exists. So along comes these symbols which represent the true creation of man. The symbols of, well, let us say, there is only in essence maybe a dozen key ones. Others have formed and evolved from these as knowledge is passed from those beyond the world into the world. There is memory for some people beyond the physical world. And here I mean into other worlds and other cultures and other races and other forms of life in other solar systems. The symbols are passed from one life to another life, yet the memory remains. You may remember a life when you was on planet ABC or whatever it is called. And that seed is within you. That seed sits within you, latent, dormant, not being used until a little bit of water inspires the seed to sprout. So your symbols and your language come from beyond the physical, the human physicality. They come from lifetimes elsewhere. And you may wonder, what is the use of them? Well, they were very useful, particularly the language, when you lived on planet ABC. And what is the use of the symbols? Well, symbols are your signposts. You will find that you and others listening here today find that they draw or write random patterns which then become evident. Oh, I didn't know I was drawing this, and this is written in a book somewhere. Just a very similar copy to, let's say, the Fibonacci spiral. So both symbol and light language come from yesteryear. They are awakening of a life within you that is but a memory. So now you have a choice. It is very interesting. The language spoken or the symbol that you see, it is interesting. And they can have meaning, and they can direct life. But it is far more important to see who is it that looks at this symbol. Who is it that is, well, using the previous talk, who is it that's permanent, that lived yesterday and will live sometime tomorrow? Who is it that lived on that planet, and how do I know this? Now, let me take you away from this topic slightly. Some have inferred that there is a book which is called the Book of God's Remembrance. It is written in the Gospel of Aquarian, the Aquarian Gospel. It is referred to prior to then. The rest of you may know it as the Akashic record. Akashic meaning sky, ether. Everything is remembered. Nothing is forgotten. Just your ability to access that memory is in doubt. For some, of course, a little bit of memory awakens. And you may know of a past life, and in this case, this is what is happening. Few people can truly access the Book of God's Remembrance. If you prefer, the body of knowledge that exists outside of your body. But of course, there are those which do. So you get glimpses within symbols and shapes and language. Now, I think you may agree with me, but currently, within your world, there has been more spoken of the language of light, and more practitioners are remembering the language of light, or light's language, you refer to it. And you will see more. Now, why? This is where you are going now. Why? Why would there be more people using the language of light when it was a language used, let us say, 1,000 years ago, or 1,000 lifetimes ago? Why is it now? And of course, you may then come up with all sorts of theories. Well, those beings are now more prevalent now. Those beings live now. Those who lived on planet A, B, C are now living on planet Earth. Those from that distant planet are visiting this Earth. Or they stand around the Earth passing messages to those which walk that planet. And in essence, it is an awakening to that seed. Now, in a talk recently, I said, when one person awakens, the whole world awakens. Now, it cannot be fully understood, that comment I made. But this is an example. When one person remembers a life on a distant planet, others on your Earth will remember it as well. So let us say one person in London remembers the knowledge, all of a sudden a person in New York or Madrid or South Africa somewhere also remember the language. It is like light globes turning on all over the planet because one person has remembered. Of course, the same with inventions, etc. Again, I refer back to another talk that consciousness grows from individual, or becomes aware from individual to, let us say, partner, then to family, then to community, and then to country, and then to humanity. There are layers of consciousness, if you wish. This is a false opinion, but this is the way it is perceived. So hence, you can have one animal in one place learning from an animal that is in the opposite side of the world. It's the same concept. And now this is accessing my medium's knowledge. He knows of an author called Rupert Sheldrake who did experiments on rats in a maze solving problems, and then realized rats on the other side of the world solved the same maze far quicker once the first rat had accomplished the task. So one little person remembering knowledge wakes up many others, and that person wakes up many others. So the dawn of light language and the use of symbols has been woken in the world. And you may go into each language or into each symbol and try to find meaning. But this, in essence, will take you deeper and deeper and deeper, and you will never be fully satisfied. not in one lifetime. So it is rather like the scientist who goes deeper and deeper, or smaller and smaller, into matter. There is always greater depth to explore. Or you go into the universe and you spot the moon and then the planets and the stars, and there is always further to go there. You will never come to the end of your search for more knowledge. Until you realize there is an underlying nature. Symbols, light language, mediumship, a sore shoulder, a friend which insults you. They all are signposts to who you are. Find first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be given to you. Find first your truth, and then your illusion will not satisfy you any longer. But you may choose to watch it. So see, Angelina, your being is waking up to this perception. You are either in the play or you are in the audience. If you are in the play or the movie, then keep digging deeper or looking more further afield. Light language is very interesting. Symbols are very interesting. You can use them, and you do use them. I think 2 years ago, my dear, I asked you to write down names and dates of your messages and communications. Are not those numbers also symbols? And do they not become useful at some other time? But does the number 3 or 4 or any other number, when written down, does it tell you anything but 3? Of course, it does very little than that, but your interpretation of it becomes the important part. Your awareness to it becomes the important part still. The awareness to the awareness is the step. Now, have I sufficiently answered your question?
I'm very grateful. Very much so. Thank you very much.
Perhaps you would like something very much more specific, but I think we've inferred to your question, and I have answered a feeling that somebody else who has a sore shoulder and somebody that is alluding to how do they go past their obstacle. And then, of course, people who have other problems. You see, when you do these talks from my side, and a question of any nature arises, how do I deal with this problem, for example? Now, this is perhaps only a point of interest, but how do you answer that question? Well, the truth is, and this is the first step if you are ever to do any teaching or working with any person, is to always answer the question. Always meet your student where they are. For example, imagine you spoke, well, let us use your language, my dear. Let's imagine you spoke Greek and your client is German, and neither of you speak a common language. Well, the communication would be very difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. It would be far better if you had a common language, one speaking the other or something in the middle. So when a question arises, you should answer it at the level of the person asking the question. So if a lady comes to you and is in grief because she has lost her child, it is inappropriate to talk about enlightenment. You need to talk about the grief first, and then maybe when the time is correct to go on to enlightenment. So you need to talk the same language. So as I was saying, from this side, we need to first deal with the person asking the question. But then we make it so much more complex for ourselves and bear in mind that there are 100 people listening to the question. And I pick 100 hypothetically. So if you ever, and I am talking in general, not specifically to you, my dear, but if you ever talk or work with people, work with your client. So the question comes, well, how do I know? How do I know where my client is, my student, my friend? How do I know where they are? I may know a little, but surely I know but a little. How do I do that? Well, you let Spirit do the work. Seek first your kingdom and heaven, and all else will be given to you. Seek first your silence, go inwards, and let the words come out as appropriate for that student. Your answers will be given to you in your silence, because everything comes from silence. Everything comes from silence and returns to silence. If you prefer, goodness travels from goodness to goodness. Truth is spoken from truth to truth. Step back from your need to talk into your kingdom of heaven inside, and you will know what to do by not knowing what to do. This is stepping away from the path of knowledge by stepping into knowledge. You do not find knowledge, you become knowledge. You do not find peace, you become peace. how can you do peace without becoming peaceful? How can you not do peace when you are peaceful? How can you not transmit peace if you are peaceful? Meet your student where they are and listen internally. More than light language exists internally, but something far more important does as well. Now, Brandon, do we have time for another question?
Yes, we do. And that was fantastic. Thank you for that. We have a question from Lena.
Have I not answered your question already, my dear?
Not quite. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I have
Good.
nothing to worry about.
No, you don't. The question that I have is something that came up recently that someone had mentioned that when someone passes away and we try to hold on to them, that it holds them back and makes it difficult for them to move on. And I'm trying to understand that if this is true, how does the physical person here have that kind of power over a soul?
My dear, it is a perceived power over us all. So let us say you and I are, well, they're sitting next to each other on your chair. And you said, I am going for a cup of tea or coffee. And I held your hand. You'd be able to stand up, but you would not be able to take another step. So the physical body can hold back a physical body, of course. And in mind, it is very possible for one mind to believe, and I underline the word believe, it can hold back another mind. So there is a belief I can control you, but I cannot, of course. And I say here as your partner. There's a belief I can control you, but I cannot. You just choose to be controlled by me. Now, you are inferring to the level of soul and the level of transmission, if you want, of passing from physical into soul. You see, the soul, its journey, let us take Barbara as an example. Physically, she has left her body. And she is now in the process of fully letting go of the role she played in her movie. The little bits of costume and the bits of memory or trapped emotions are dropping away. And this is why there is a period of time of, let us call it healing. And that movie or the role she played in the movie is getting lessened or having less of a hold to her. Now she has an immense bond with children, grandchildren, family and friends, as you could imagine. But that bond is also falling away. It's not a bond of attachment any longer. So in essence, your question is true. In the early days, you can hold back a person, but only briefly. Very, very briefly. Does not any loving person, when they lose their mother or their friend, say, I do not want you to go? And yet the spirit mother says, I do not want to go. But go I must. So it is like adding a little pause in the natural flow of events. And then the mother, the spirit mother, does not lose the memory. It does not lose the emotion, but sees clearly. It is like having your glasses cleaned. And looks back on daughter with all the same emotion and attachment. Sorry, all the same emotion, but no attachment. The connection will always be there. The connection between one side of another never breaks. There is a feeling that there is a split, but there is not. But the personality of the deceased may disperse, and go in other directions. Hence, you can find a deceased relative may not always come back to visit you, no matter the bond. Attachment only exists within the physical world and briefly in transition. There is nothing to hold on to from our side. Because holding on is judgment. Judgment means limitation. It is your side that is limited. Our side is unlimited. You have a limited life, we have eternity. So the feeling that you may, or whoever you are alluding to, may have done some damage in holding on is a fallacy. You cannot. True love is not holding on. True love is letting go. Holding on is the human side of limited love. Letting go is our side of unlimited or unconditional. My dear, there is no thing for you to worry about. There is nothing you could do which could be wrong or hinder the process more than just a little hiccup. And that is done with love. So we have no judgment. Let your heart be free. Imagine that you look back on your life and you say, well, when I was 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, and I did that thing, I could have done better. I should have picked the opposite direction. I should have said yes when I meant no, etc. Your world holds on to that. Our world sees that. But that's all. Remember, in the quote, those that walk in the garden land of true knowledge see the end in the beginning in the end, and peace in war. So your eyesight, if I may say, is limited because of your humanness. Offer no judgment. You are here to play the role. Our eyesight sees eternity. There is no beginning and end. Know that this is just the recognition of love. Know that this is true love that stirs within you, which gets expressed in a slightly wrong way. But let your love come to the surface anyway. Let your peace rise to the surface if you know not what it is. You make the mistake by holding on to the emotion rather than letting it transmit through you. I have been working on your shoulder as we speak. I believe, Brandon, our time is done.
Thank you, Ignatius. I greatly appreciate it. Feel much better now.
Thank you.
With that in mind, I will step away and ask you all to walk in the garden land of true knowledge. Come back to your spiritual self. All that you seek is there. Well, did we do it? I gather we did. Oh, itchy.
Yeah.
Uh,
So